Business
$1 million.
English
Show me the money!
Pod.
Welcome to Business English Pod, the place where you can hear business English as it's spoken by professionals in the workplace. Hi, my name's Chris, and today's lesson is an advanced lesson. It's advanced, it's going to be fast and a bit challenging. We're going to be doing a product description. So anybody out there in sales or anybody just interested in tech, because we're going to be talking about computers, or just the ability to describe things more thoroughly, you'll be interested in this lesson. Christy and David are here with me today.
How's it going?
Welcome to the show, everyone.
Hello, hello. So in the dialogue, David has just bought a computer, but he doesn't really know much about it. And he quotes kind of the stats of the computer, all the things it has, what we call the bells and whistles, all those little extra things. But he doesn't really fully understand. So he's going to ask Christy to explain to him, and she does a pretty good job. So let's listen to the dialogue. Pay attention to, now the language revolving around something more specific like computers. It's very kind of technical, and there's a lot of very specific words to that industry. So I want you to listen for words of this category, so such as like terminology. So you'll hear things like the word jargon. Okay, let's go ahead and let's listen.
So, I've bought a new computer. It's got an Intel Core 2 Duo E6 300 processor, 1.86 gigahertz FSB, a multi-format dual-layer DVD RW drive, 1 gigabyte of RAM, a 200 gigabyte hard disk drive, 6 USB connections, and a TFT monitor.
Wow, that sounds fantastic.
Well, it is. At least, I think it is. But if truth be told, I don't really know what any of it means. It's all mumbo-jumbo to me.
Really? I used to work in a shop that sold computers, so I got to know what a lot of this jargon means. I can explain some of it if you like.
That'd be great. So for starters, what's this Intel Core 2 Duo processor?
The processor is the main component that determines a computer's performance. The speed is measured in gigahertz, written as GHz. Although many other factors will affect a computer's system's performance, generally, the bigger the processor, the faster your computer will run. The Intel Core 2 Duo processor is just the make and type of the processor that's in your computer. AMD is another well-known make.
I see. What does FSB mean?
FSB stands for front side bus. This, or simply bus speed, is how fast data and information travels between 2 points within your computer system. This is measured in megahertz. So the more FSB your computer has, the faster it will run.
Right, that makes sense. What about RAM then?
RAM is a computer's short-term memory and is measured in megabytes, or megs, or gigabytes, or gigs. A gigabyte is 1,024 megabytes. RAM is used to store programs and data which are currently being used by the computer. The more memory you have in your computer, the more programs you can run at the same time. For example, a computer with 2 gigs of RAM will be able to process more documents, downloads, and run more programs at the same time compared to a computer with 512 megabytes of RAM.
You really do know your stuff. I think I'll go back to my office and get my new PC plugged in.
Great. So Christy knew a lot about computers there. And let's go through a little bit of it for you. So just some basic concepts. Probably most people know that RAM is kind of like the short-term memory of the computer, as Christy said. It really is the ability to have lots of programs running at the same time. So maybe you're writing something on Microsoft Office. Maybe you're downloading some music. Maybe you are instant messaging with somebody all at the same time. Well, old computers from 8 or 10 years ago, they couldn't do that at all. Computers now, they have enough RAM to be able to do it. Okay. Let's go to the language here. So one thing that David mentioned first off is that his computer was brand new.
That means it's right out of the box.
Yeah.
I haven't
Completely new.
used it at all.
It's
right?
not really anything to do with the brand, whether it's, an IBM or whether it's a Dell or it's a Lenovo or some other kind of brand. So, but it's really, really new. Then there's a couple words about, terminology. One is mumbo jumbo and the other is jargon. So mumbo jumbo, that's not a business word at all, but what does mumbo jumbo mean, Christy?
It means something that's hard to understand, language that's hard to understand.
Right. So you could be speaking Greek
Right.
to me, and I would understand as much
Right.
as when you're talking about technical computer language. Okay. The idea there, that mumbo jumbo. But then jargon. What's jargon, David?
Jargon is a language that uses a lot of new words that people may not understand.
Okay. So let's say, for example, at On Demand English, we're a language training company. We're also kind of a tech company. So we talk a lot about Lexis. We talk a little bit about, the lexical approach to language learning. We're talking about collocations. We're talking about tech things like RSS feeds. Not everybody will understand this. Sometimes we call that jargon.
Yeah, it's words that may be more difficult than it has to be.
Right.
Like if I said, I'm a vocal apparatus specialist
Yeah.
rather than I'm a voice person.
A voice on a podcast. Yeah. So sometimes it's over technical or sometimes it's very specific. You'll hear a lot of acronyms for things like this. Okay.
Right.
That's what jargon is. It's almost like local language around a job, around a specific field or industry. All right, now some other major words we need to know. One is a component. So we're talking about computers. Different components of the computer is
Different pieces, different parts.
pieces or parts, right? And then a make. The make of a computer, or here we talked about the make of a processor. One was FSB, one was AMD. An older one was the Pentium 1, the Pentium 2, the Pentium 3. So the make is really like the type of something, okay? Now, let's get into some of the more technical side of computers. When you're looking at buying a computer and you see a bunch of numbers and beside them they say MB or GB or just G, a lot of people, they know what that means, but they don't know how to say it. So how do we say MB?
Megabytes.
Or?
Megs.
Yeah, for short, it's megs. Or how about G?
Gigabytes or gigs.
Yeah,
But
so-
never GB or MB.
No,
Right.
no.
So I might say my computer has 100 gigs, okay? 100 gigs of memory, standard ROM, okay? Hard drive space. Now, what about the speed? So I might say I've got a Pentium 2, it's 1.7 GHz. What is GHz?
Gigahertz.
Gigahertz. So something to do with speed, okay?
fast.
We could never say MB. We can't say GHz. We write it that way because it's easy, because it's short. But we'd say gigahertz, okay? So megs, gigs, gigahertz, and then megahertz. So the CPU, the central processing unit, that's what we're talking about when we say dual core processor and that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. Christy explained FSB really well in the dialogue, I think. It's just about the speed of how different parts of your computer communicate. So between the RAM and, let's say, the CPU, there's kind of like a connection there. And the higher your FSB, the faster that speed is, okay? And the faster your overall computer performance will be.
Wow, I'm not a computer person, and all this jargon sure sounds like mumbo jumbo to me.
Yeah, exactly. That's what some people say when they're in the store and they're talking about this with the salesperson. So a fast-talking salesperson, can maybe confuse you a little bit. So let me give one last example. I'll mention my computer. It's a little bit slower. I'm sorry, it's older, but I've got 80 gigs of hard drive space.
Ooh.
And the processor's a Pentium 3. It's about 3.1 gigahertz, okay? And I think just 512 megs of RAM, 512 megs of RAM. I've got a flat screen, but it's not the TFT monitor that David mentioned. TFT is a newer kind where actually each pixel on the screen, each point on the screen has its own transistor, much more advanced for LCD screens. So that's about it for my example. Really, what you have to do now, take a look at the computer you have, at the specifics of it. Take a look at some flyers, actually, that you see, some advertisements for computers. See if you can say everything like a salesperson would say. Or like you're David, you're describing the new computer you bought to your friend. And that's great practice. Go to the website for more on this. It'll be a lot more clear in written form, but we want it to help you with speaking some of these things like gigabytes, megabytes. David and Christy, thank you very much for helping.
Thank you, Chris.
See you soon.
And from everybody here, thanks for listening. See you next time.